Today's guest on Only Human is Hunter Gawne. Hunter is a photographer living in California who has graciously shared some of his favorite pictures and stories in this particular episode. If you're listening on Spotify or some other streaming platform, I show the pictures of the photos that he mentions in real time. So if you want to go and peer over to the YouTube link that is in the description to go and see them, pop right back right afterwards. Enjoy the podcast. Hunter, what event led to your biggest personal revelation?
Revelation in regards to like life or just like photography or like can you expand on that?
It can be in regards to photography. I would say that, like, if you look back on a point in your life that was just really influential, like if someone were to like say, can you give me like a timeline of your life? Is there anything that jumps out that says like, okay, this is like a pivot point for me that like led me on to this current path?
I mean, when I moved to so after I graduated high school, I moved to Portland, Oregon, and because I never wanted to go to school and just had no interest in going to school, and I just figured, you know what, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna have fun and try and like make it as like a photographer and all this stuff. And so I moved to Portland, and it was really tough. I had never been away from my parents for more than like a week, and it was it was really tough. I learned a lot. I was gone for about a year, and then um, ended up moving away from Portland. But I would honestly say, like when I moved to Portland, that was a big like pivotal moment for me where a lot of things just kind of changed, and I think that's the case with everybody. Once you graduate high school, you know, whatever you do, once you graduate high school, like your life changes a bit, you know.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a little different because I didn't go to college and I didn't do what you know the normal you know Hudson kid did, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um, and I got some. I don't want to say crap, but well, no, I got some crap for it. But I also got some like little bit of shade here and there, like, "Oh, you're not going to college," and I'm like, "Nope," and I don't want to go, you know. And everyone's like, what are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "I'm just gonna move to Portland and like try and make it as a photographer." And like, I didn't make it as a photographer there, but like, what's the definition of making it? You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's different for everybody. But that was really kind of when I don't want to say found myself, but just realized a lot of different things and really started learning a lot more about myself. And just I've always been a big dreamer and a big risk taker, but moving to Portland was like the first step for me. So I would say like probably that move
Okay.
to Portland was pretty pivotal. So
What would you say the hardest part about moving to Portland was? Because you mentioned a lot about being away from family or your parents. Was that the hardest part?
yeah, I'm really close with my family. We talk uh, probably about 3 times a day. I'm very close with them. Um, and if you know, there's a day where I like don't talk to them, it's like it feels weird, you know. Like I can go days without talking to them, but it's just like I'm like, oh, I didn't do my daily routine of like talking to my parents. But I talk to them all the time because I love them, and you know they're my biggest supporters. So definitely being away from them was really difficult. And I mean, before I moved to Portland, I hadn't been away from home for more than like a week, and I had a lot of just separation anxiety, and just even if I was home and they weren't home, like it wasn't separation from my parents. It was just like separation from being home,
Mm.
and it was just a big jump. And moving there, and like I didn't know anybody there. I had like 2 friends there that I like didn't even really know that much. So, or not know that much. No, I didn't know them that well, and it was just it was really difficult. And my whole goal was like, oh well, I'm just gonna move out there and like everything's just gonna fall into place. And obviously, that's what happens. But you know, little 18-year-old me, I didn't know that. You know, I had to realize that I had to experience that to understand that it's not. not how it works, you know?
Yeah.
It was depressing, and but I made a lot of friends there, and I have clients there now, and I have a lot of friends there now. I'm actually going up to Oregon in like 2-3 weeks. Like, I gotta get some work done up there, but I'm gonna see some friends and stuff. So it's like not the place for me, but it's very important to me because of all the things that I went through there. Um, it means a lot to me.
Okay. Would you say that your faith, because we're both as two God fearing men, was your faith improved or was it tested when you pulled up?
I didn't really have a faith when I moved to Oregon. Like, my parents were always Christians growing up. My sister is very strong in her faith, and almost everybody in my family is. But I personally didn't really care. Like, I didn't. I was one of those kids who would like go to church like high because I just like I didn't understand that like relationship with God, and not just like, oh, I go to church, I'm a good Christian, like it's not about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I enjoy being a Christian because I get to have a personal relationship with the Lord.
Yes.
It's way
Yes.
beyond just going to church, like, or doing a good thing here and there. Like, I get to walk through life with the Lord, and we'll get into it more later on, but dude, like, God's just done so many amazing like miracles in my life that I've seen time and time again, whether it's you know provision or whatever. I mean, there's so many things He's done in my life where I'm like, all right, like, I can't deny that. Um, my faith was, if I had faith, it totally would have been tested, but it wasn't really until the reason I left was because one day I just felt like I wasn't happy there anymore, and I didn't understand what that feeling was. It just felt really weird, and I didn't know what it was, and um, I felt like God was calling me to just do other things. I started praying for like the first time in years. Since I was like a little kid, I started like praying. I was like, God, like, I know we don't chat much, but like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? I always wanted to move here, and I haven't even been here. I've been here like close to a year, and like, what do you like? I feel like you don't want me here anymore. You're like closing the door. I just felt like he was saying he was opening up other ones. He opened up a door for me to go to Australia and do missions work for a year, and it was unbelievable. And we'll chat more about that later. But yeah, dude, I would say Oregon is kind of really the start of like my faith journey.
Okay.
So towards the end of it, he totally tested my faith. But when I was there, like, not really, not till the end of it.
Okay. That's interesting because I wondered how you ended up in Cali. So, just a quick recap. You went from Hudson to Oregon to Australia, and then what?
Correct. Back to Ohio, and then to Australia, or not to Australia. Back to Ohio to California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting, dude. Okay.
Ohio, Oregon, Australia, Ohio, California.
Okay.
And I'm 22, so it's like a lot for a 22-year-old as far as traveling, and I've been a lot of places, whether it's for work or missions or fun or whatever. But God's led me to a bunch of different places, do a bunch of cool stuff. So it's been quite the journey, and I plan on sticking around here because things are going really, really well, and this is where most of my work is, and I mean, all my work pretty much is on the West Coast. Um, so just it makes the most sense to be here, and I'm happy here, and there's such great Christian community out here that I have the best friends in the world, and I'm surrounded by, you know, just amazing friends, and I I couldn't I couldn't see myself anywhere else. So
Okay. So, how would you describe your work?
I think it's changed a lot in the past 5 years, 4 or 5 years. I mean, I first kind of started out shooting all landscapes, and then I started moving into, and I learned a little bit in the landscape, world when I was shooting landscapes and stuff like that. And like, I was like purely a nature photographer, which I never really like wanted to be, but I was just taking nature photos because I was outside all the time and traveling and stuff. So I'm like, well, I'll just take advantage of it. When I was done doing landscape stuff, I was like, you know what? Let's do like architecture, and that architecture quickly turned into like shooting abandoned buildings and getting into like that whole like rooftop scene. I don't know if you've seen that on like you used to see that on YouTube or anything, where like we break into buildings and like go on the roof of like skyscrapers. So I was like big in that scene for a while, and ended up getting in a lot of trouble for some stuff. And um, then after that was like, you know what, I'm gonna like experiment with some portraits of people. And um, I started photographing homeless people because that was like all the people that I was around when I was going to these abandoned buildings and stuff, and just hanging out in like different cities. I'd like drive to Chicago with my friends, and like we'd go and just go for the weekend and just like, go on these skyscrapers on these rooftops. And crazy, um, just looking back at that. But I was always just around like homeless people or like my friends. And so I'm like, all right. So I started experimenting with photos of my friends on the rooftops, kind of experimenting with like low light stuff, and then started moving to shooting slow shutters. And I ended up doing I made a photo book of all the homeless people I photographed in Cleveland, and turned into like this whole like donation project thing. And so I kind of just experimented in so many different things. And I think now, like this where I'm at now is what I'm at the point where I'm shooting what I've wanted to for the longest time, and I'm getting paid to do it. And I would say I don't think there's like one word to describe it, but I like to shoot commercial and lifestyle and editorial stuff, because I like photographing people in whatever setting. Um, but I also shoot a lot of surf too. I mean, as somebody that I get a lot of my inspiration from just the water and the ocean and stuff like that. I had to start shooting surfing because I was like, I'd be out there and I'm like, oh, I gotta, now I gotta shoot photos of this, and like this would be crazy. And then ended up being able to like bring my camera out in the water and stuff, which is super cool. But I don't know. I think that's a really tough question. I kind of like went off track there, but I guess that's kind of what this is. This is just like an interview basically. I don't really know how to like describe it. I mean, all these photos behind me, they're like pretty much all mine. Besides this like Star Wars poster here, I didn't take that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just landscapes and stuff from the past. But um, I just shoot it all because I don't think it's good to pigeonhole yourself into shooting one thing. And I've always been big on that. Um, so I can't really answer that like in a really good way. But that kind of tells you what I like to shoot.
Got it. Okay, dude. So that's cool because I was curious about like your, I don't know what you would call it, photography story arc, or like at least like your interests, like in subjects and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I really like photographing people. I think that is the most exciting thing for me when it comes to photography. Whether that's somebody surfing or whether that's, whether I'm shooting a surfer or I'm shooting, a friend of mine in an alleyway or whatever, or I'm shooting a, famous person, for New York Times Magazine, whatever it is. I like having a person in there. And every time I shoot a landscape now, I'm like, shoot, I wish I had a person in here, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I love capturing people in their just in their raw state, in their moment, whatever that moment is.
I'm gonna ask you a very abstract question, but what do you think is the most magnetizing factor of taking portraits?
That is a very abstract question. I'm a big people person. I love connecting. I love networking. I'm very good at networking. Um, so I think I love that human connection, and I like to display that in a photograph as well as I can.
Okay. Okay, so going back a little bit, just to zoom out. So your origin stories. So can you talk about what it was like to first like pick up photography and like think about it as a passion?
Yeah, I remember getting into the class in my freshman year. And what year did you graduate?
2015.
Okay, so yeah, I remember getting into the class my freshman year, which was like really impossible because it was like a seniority class. It was a really popular class at that time. It still is, but you needed to give seniority to the class, which I totally understood. But somebody dropped the class or whatever, and I was able to stay in the class. And honestly, started taking photos and just never looked back because I had so much fun taking photos. And we get an assignment to go shoot, let's say, 50 photos on the weekend, and I'd come back with like 500 just because I couldn't stop taking photos. And I just like I'd never done something because I can't write, I can't paint, like my handwriting is absolute shit. I can't draw any of that stuff. So I'm like, all right, how am I gonna like pass any of these art classes, without them like being nice, and just giving me like an A because I like tried. Um, so I got into the photo class and just freaking never looked back. I loved it. And Mr. Noyux and I, the photo teacher, we got super tight, and we're still friends to this day. We still chat. Every time I'm home, I'll go in to the school and see him, or we'll grab coffee or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I just developed this good friendship with him, and um, it was that was another big pivotal moment in my life where things just changed because I had never felt something that, like, I guess freed me like photography did. And I guess that sounds kind of lame, but it's true.
No, I hear you. So in high school, was there a particular picture that you took that you looked at and you're like, wow, I'm nice? Where you're like, you were confident in your abilities on top of those, like freeing and fulfilling feelings?
Yeah, I one day I was at school, and my teacher my mom worked with at McDowell, which is the third grade school at the time. I think it's still. And they were redoing their house. They just bought some property and they were building a house. And there was an existing house on the property. And they were tearing that house down. They called the fire department and they said, hey, we need to get this house down. Do you guys want to do a practice controlled burn on it? And they were like, yeah, cool, let's do it. So that was happening that day, and my mom had told me, and I was like, oh, can I skip school? And like, I can't remember, I had like a test or something that day. And so I call my dad, I finished the test, and then I call my dad, and I'm like, hey dad, like, want to go to lunch? I brought my camera to school that morning. I was like, hey dad, want to go to lunch? And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm like, so I've got this whole thing planned out in my head. I'm like, all right, we're gonna have to drive by there, by the house, to get to the like lunch spot that we're going to. So I get in the car and he's like, why do you have your camera? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like I just like you never know. And he's like, we're going to that house, aren't we? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, all right. And I took this photo of these two firefighters carrying like this carpet with the burning house behind them, and it was like a black and white photo, and I ended up winning a national scholastic award for it.
Yo.
And that was that was crazy. That was like I remember taking that and just the love and the appreciation that that photo got from not only my friends but just I mean it won that award, you know. So somebody up there that has some influence liked it. So I don't know. I think I just kind of took that and just ran with it. I was like, all right, like I have the potential to like do this as a living, and
Very
kind of
cool.
just kind of worked out. So
Okay. So to this day, do you have like a favorite picture that you've taken?
I have it on my phone, like way back in the archives. But this one behind me, right here, it's not like necessarily my favorite photo, but it's one of my favorite memories. I was in Nepal, and I bought a flight to go fly past Mount Everest, and they let me in the cockpit of this like Boeing 737,
Yo.
and I got to photograph Mount Everest, which is right here in the corner, which you can't really see that well, but yeah, that was pretty crazy. But I don't know, dude. I don't really have one single favorite, but I think that firefighter one is totally up there because of that award and just that was a life changing photo. You know, that photo changed my life.
Okay.
And which also sounds cheesy, like, oh, that photo changed my life, but I mean it did. It opened up a lot of doors, and it opened up that door for me to like believe in myself that I could do this successfully and do this for a living.
Okay. Okay, so what I want to talk about is that I think it's so sick how with the firefighter picture and you snapping that picture of Mount Everest, both of those things sort of required you to like get off your ass and like get after it. You know what I mean? So can you talk about like asking people and just like seeking opportunities and doing that stuff on your own?
Yeah, so that's a question that I get like very often. Like I get messages on Instagram like very often of like how do you go about like doing what you do, and because I've always had this like full send it mentality, and that'll never change because that I love living that way, but it's also like opened up countless doors. Um, and obviously in high school when I took that photo, I was just like, I'm just gonna make this happen, you know? I'm just gonna do it because that's what I want to do, you know? Like you can't always get what you want, but you can try, right? So that was, I mean, just obviously that was just texting my dad and being like, "Hey, let's go to lunch," you know, and taking that photo. But when I was in Nepal, I was doing submissions work as well, and um, I, some of my friends were like, "Hey, you know, we're doing this flight to Mount Everest, and it's like pretty cheap." It was like, dude, it was like $100 or like $75. I was like, "All right, cool," like, and we just kind of did it. I think I don't know if that's probably not the best story of like how to describe it, like how I go about things. I think there was this one time when I was living in Oregon, and I went up. It was like pouring down rain in Portland, and I don't know if you know anything about Oregon, but there's a huge mountain, Mount Hood up there. You can ski year round, and I went I wanted to go up to Mount Hood one night. It was like, I mean, like I said, it was pouring down rain. It was probably like, I don't know, 7 o'clock at night. And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go up there. And my friends are like, dude, like, it's raining. Like, you're not going to. I'm like, well, I just want to go for a drive. I'm just going to go up there. It's like 2 hours from where I live. And so I go up there and I'm driving there and I get up above the clouds. And it's so clear because I'm above the clouds. So it's not raining up there. And I'm like, dang, this is sick. I'm going to sit here and enjoy this. So then I sit there and enjoy and I'm like, wait a minute, the Milky Way is going to be right there, like right above Mount Hood. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go send it, grab my camera, so drive 2 hours back, grab my camera. I think I took like a 15-minute nap, grabbed my camera, went back up, stayed up there, shot the Milky Way from like, I shot it like 2 hours probably, just sat up there. And I get back to my place at like, I don't know, 3, 4 a.m. And I was shooting some real estate photos out there, like on the side. And that's kind of what I was doing for work. And it sucked, but it is what it is. And I like had to shoot a house at like 9 a.m. And it was just, I was so exhausted, but I'm like, that was so worth it, you know? Like, I will never forget that. And I love proving people wrong and, you know, saying like, oh, well, you told me that this wasn't going to work, but it worked. You know, you can't always prove people wrong, but again, you can try. So I think that's just kind of how I look at everything. I'm like, why not? Like, I could trip on the sidewalk and die tomorrow, get in a car accident and die tomorrow. Like, you know, God forbid that happen. But you know what? If that's his plan for my life, then so be it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna send it until I can't anymore, you know.
Yes, exactly.
It's always kind of how I've like gone about life, and I think that's one of my favorite qualities about myself.
Dope. Okay, so do you have that picture of the Milky Way?
Not in here. I can text it to you, and you can like attach it.
Yeah, I want to see that, and I want to see the firefighter one too.
Absolutely, I will text or email both of those to you, and you can like attach them.
Dope.
Just one of my favorite photo or stories to tell.
Yeah,
I love it.
I think it's really cool when people go out and do stuff by themselves. Like, I know a lot of people are embarrassed to say that like they go to the movie theaters sometimes by themselves, but that's really cool to go 2 hours, then 2 hours back, and then 2 hours back, and then sit there for a bit, and then you're out there to like 3, 4 a.m. Like, that's a pretty personal.
And then 2 hours back again.
Yeah. And I think there's something like oddly impactful about doing that by yourself. And just to rope this back, like we can talk about this later, but I think it's interesting how you said that earlier about your faith growing up in church. And I'm the same way, is that like I never saw faith or my relationship with God as like a community aspect. I've always saw it as a personal journey.
Yeah.
And
it totally is. You can't make somebody a Christian. They gotta want it themselves.
Yep.
Once they want it themselves and they experience that, they'll know why. It's a personal journey. You can't just go and sit in church and like it just doesn't work like that. You're gonna enjoy it way more if you know what a personal relationship with the Lord looks like.
Yeah. You know what's funny is that growing up, I used to think that people who labeled themselves as born again, I just never understood that. But now that I'm at this point in my life where I, went to church growing up, and I called myself a Christian, but I had no idea like what that meant. I was just going through the motions. And I think someone who labels himself as born again, is actually more of a Christian than someone who's been a Christian their entire life. You know what I mean? For the most part. Like, I'm not sure about, everyone, but
yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's like everybody's just on their own journey, and we're all sinners and we all suck and we don't deserve anything, but God's grace is so sufficient, and you know what, like we're gonna fail, but he loves us through that, and he forgives us. So we're all on our own personal journey.
Do you know God exists, or do you think God exists? Like, do you believe in God?
I'd say both. I believe in God. but I also know he exists because he showed up countless times in my life
So
and
like
in my
know
friends'
it with
lives.
absolute certainty.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and in strangers' lives too. I've seen God work in miraculous ways, and you know, on the side of the street, so whether that's somebody, whether it was me or one of my friends, praying for somebody, and prayer is such a crazy thing. Like we underestimate the power of prayer. We really do. And I even constantly do that on a daily basis. Sometimes I'll be going through something. I'm like, oh, I don't need to pray about this. And I'm like, why? Like, what do you mean? Like, no, I don't need to do anything, but I should pray about this, because God's going to help me get through that, whatever that it is. Um, so yeah, no, I would say both. That's a really good question, though. I'm gonna start asking my friends that.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting because there are a lot of people who I talk to who are like, yeah, like I'm fairly certain that I believe in God, blah blah. But you talk to some people and they are certain, and like you ask them why they're certain, and they just have very very cool answers.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. Everybody's answer is gonna be totally different. Totally different. My roommate, he does documentaries, and he is currently working on a documentary with two friends of mine that are Christians, but they used to be hardcore drug addicts, like heroin, you name it, oxycodone, like you name it. And watching their videos and just like the testimonies and stuff, it is unbelievable the ways that God has shown up in their lives. Like most people don't get through stuff that they've been through.
Yep. So you must have at some point gotten feedback from somebody you took a picture of. Are there any like stories that come to mind of feedback that you took of someone? Wait, let me back up. Like feedback after someone has seen a portrait that you've taken of them, or just like a fan who's like been across your Instagram picture and saw something that hit you up and it moved you.
I delivered some wedding photos that I took at my for my friend's wedding the other day, and they loved them. Um, but I don't usually shoot weddings. Like I hate shoot weddings. I hate shooting weddings. Um, it's not my forte, and it's not what I shoot most.
Okay.
Good. So I mean, that's always good, when someone's like, "Oh, I love my wedding photo," that's good. And I was really stoked that like one of my good friends loved their wedding photos, of course. Um, but I'm not I'll be the first one to tell you. I just shooting weddings is not my thing, and it's not what I do for a living, and like I'm not a wedding photographer in any way. But if my friends need a wedding photographer and they're like, we want you to shoot it, I'm like, all right, cool. I appreciate that they want me to do that, and I do it, But I don't market myself as a wedding photographer. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I've got a bunch of good feedback from work. From whether that's someone DMing me like, oh, I love this so much, or like this really touched me, or oh, you know what? I took. Let's pull it down. If I have it up here, that way I don't have to like email it to you, and then you can I'll just show it to the screen. So I took this photo of these kids in India. Could you see that well?
Yeah.
Or was it kind of like cool? I took this photo of these kids in India. It was in this like village, and we were just doing some ministry there, and we were playing soccer with the kids and just kind of hanging out. I was walking around just hanging out with the different villagers and the kids, and just playing jokes on the kids and stuff. And they all wanted me to take a photo of them. So I walk up with my camera and they all like run up onto this bench that they're on, and they just all smile. And then one of them, you know, pulls his sister's cheeks, and like I'm like, this is just the greatest photo op ever. And this was so like, this wasn't me saying, oh, everybody get in there, you know, smile pretty, you know, it wasn't anything like that. That was so natural and just raw. But I remember taking that and then posting that photo, and somebody messaged me and said, this photo makes me feel different. This photo makes me like want to become a Christian. And I was like,
whoa,
what? Like, are you kidding me? Like that is the best compliment I could ever receive.
Yeah, whoa.
Yeah, they said I was in India like 2 years ago, so it was a while ago. I can't really remember exactly what they said, but essentially they were saying that they just saw God's love through that photo, and just the joy of living, you know, the joy of these kids. And these kids, like, they don't have anything. They're living in this village, and like they have water, but like they don't have much else. Like they're living in these shacks, and that compliment meant more to me than anything. So I'll never forget that. But I mean, I've received a bunch of different compliments for different photos, whether it's, you know, similar to that one or not. But I don't know. Each one means something different to me.
Yeah.
But it's those types of things are what keep me going on my hard days. You know, like if there's nothing else that keeps me going, I'm like, oh, like, you know, if you get in creative rut, you're like, no, like that person wanted to, you know, wants to know Jesus because you took that photo. Like, why would you quit? You know, because there's been countless times where I've wanted to quit. I've wanted to drop everything I'm doing, you know, and just go like live in the woods, or, you know, live in, like when I was, before I moved to Australia, when I felt like the Lord was calling me to do something else. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna move to Montana and just like live in the woods. Like I didn't know what I was gonna do, you know. And you know, praise God, I didn't do that. But you know, you gotta keep going on those days when I was gonna freaking put my camera down, you know. I was just gonna quit everything I was doing, and but no, like I was born for this. I was made for this, you know. I was made to take photos, and it's not about the photos for me. It's about the stories, you know. So, yeah.
Do you think that person messaging you was like divine intervention? Because I think about how people who might have felt that way but never said anything to you, did that feedback come to you at a point when you were down? Also,
I can't remember if I was feeling down at that time. Life was pretty dang good during that time, if I remember correct. No, I don't need to remember. I know it was. But yeah, I would say it was divine intervention. I think a lot of things are divine intervention, and we don't even realize it. You know.
yeah.
But then again, what's the difference? What's the difference between divine intervention and just having a life of faith and trusting God with everything you do?
Right.
You know, is that normal or is that divine intervention? You know, because that's just kind of how God works. You know.
Yeah.
It's a good question though.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot to think about, especially because, yeah, I mean, you're right in the ball. It's about like that's sort of part and parcel of having that faith in the first place. What does, and you can let me know if you don't deliberately practice, but what does deliberate practice look like in photography?
Working hard, taking photos, learning, failing, experiencing, you know, I spend a lot of time going out, reaching out to people, not as much anymore, but well, no, still here and there, but reaching out to people that I look up to and saying, hey, you know, can we chat? You know, I just want to see how you go about things, you know, with how you do work, you know. Um, and I get people hitting me up for the same thing, and I never turn that down because, or I try not to. If I have, if somebody's watching this and I have turned them down, it wasn't deliberately. Um, I I'm a very open book, and I want to be able to help people to do exactly what and be better at it. You know.
If someone were to approach you and they really liked your work and they said that they're just not confident in themselves yet, they don't think their stuff is up to par, what advice would you give them to like improve themselves, to improve their work?
Stop looking at Instagram and comparing your work to everyone else.
Okay.
Because I do that. Not as much anymore, but I used to do that all the freaking time. And social media will consume the crap out of you. And it's just it's a great place. I don't get me wrong, I love social media and I love the Instagram platform. It's opened up countless doors for me and continues to, and I've made, you know, I've met people on there that are some of my best friends to this day. But you got to limit your time on there. You got to stop comparing your work. I live by this too. Like I'm still, you know, I'm not saying, oh, I don't do this, you know, you got to stop doing this because I do this too. You know, I spend too much time on that app, you know. I've spent less time than I used to, and I, you know, try to continue to spend less and less time. Because I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you just need to like limit your time on it. But that's the big thing that I say to people because that's what helps me. That's what's helped me a lot is not comparing work. Because what's that saying? Like art is in the eye of the beholder.
Beauty,
Know?
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You like don't go and you know you can look up to somebody. That's fine. That's great. I look up to so many people. But there's a difference in looking up to somebody and not copying, but like wanting to be that person. You know?
Yeah.
I struggled for a long time with like, oh, I just want to be that person. No. I want to be Hunter Gawne, you know? Like I don't want to be anybody else but me. But you got to check yourself and think, do I really want to be like everybody else or that other person? You want to be yourself, you know. You want to be, and that's how it works with the business side of it too. Companies don't want to work with. Companies want to work with you because you're you. You have that unique style. You have that unique personality. Why would they work with you if your stuff is the same exact as Joe Schmo? You know, who's got, you know, more clients or whatever. It's not about that. So, yeah, that's how I answer that.
So, was there a point after you started in high school that you didn't really need validation to approve of how good your photos looked?
No.
That's it?
No, I still I think as a human I still like have to feel validated sometimes, which I don't like, you know?
Right. No, I mean, I'm with you.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to feel validated. I think just recently, within the past like 6-8 months, I have just not needed like as much validation. I used to want and not need, but I used to want validation like all the time, you know, because like that's another thing that social media does. Oh, like and I didn't get enough comments. I didn't get enough likes. Who gives a like what? You know, that's all just validation. What do you? That just wraps right back around to the whole thing we were talking about before. You know, we don't need it. Obviously, uh, compliment is nice. There's a difference between a compliment and like needing validation. So
Yes, that's for sure.
I think that was in high school was a time period where I was caught up in all the wrong stuff and wanted to really felt like I like needed validation, but I don't I don't want to want validation or need validation.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly learning, and there is no I'm not the best, and Chris Burkhart's not the best. There's no best, there is no best. There's it's art, everybody's different, and it just goes down to that.
I just think it's interesting how what do you relate to? You said the past 6-7 months that you sort of tapered off the need for validation. Do you think there's a reason for that?
Yeah, I one of my best friends, Benny, has and his wife and my roommate and just other people as well have completely changed my life and my view on how I look at myself. And I've struggled with just severe depression and anxiety and OCD and suicidal thoughts and actions and self-harm and all that stuff. I've dealt with all of that, and time to time, not as much anymore, but my view on it, they and Benny, most importantly, in the photo side of he's a time video. He's worked with.
Wait, hold up. Your mic didn't pick up that last thing you said. You're a little too quiet.
No, I was saying my friend Benny. He's worked with everybody. You name it, he probably worked with them.
Okay.
And he is just a fire Christian dude I have ever met in my life, and completely into the person that I'm becoming. But we just have such a solid friendship. We work on a lot of projects together, and we hang every day, and just being around him and his wife just completely transformed the way I look at how I view myself and how I view my work, and not needing validation and all those types of things. Having them as some of my best friends is been things that I've ever had in my life. Not just them, among other people, but I think in the last 6-8 months especially, it's been a huge part of that. And I didn't know I was in high school. So
have you gotten inspiration on that level from not another human being, like nature, or just like?
Not really. Not as much as I used to. It comes and goes, but I really struggle with and depression and things like that. So.
Well, your mic cut out again. I'm sorry.
No worries. I used to just completely hate myself and everything I did. I used to hate every photo I took, and the photos that I take and look at it and say, you know what? No, like, you are talented. God's really giving an unbelievable gift, and that gift is like kind of, slap face, like,
right.
No, this gift you gave me isn't good enough. it wasn't recently that I really started believing in myself or believing in my work, you know?
Okay. I mean, I think it's really cool that you were able to find those people to impact you in such a way, because I relate to you a lot in terms of being extremely grateful for having people who seemingly stumbled across my path spontaneously. Like, I don't know how you met Benny and them, but I think the most impactful people stumbled across my life spontaneously. How did you meet those people?
So, super kind of long, but so the missions program that I did in Australia, my best, his program overlapped with Benny's wife's program, and then some like mutual friends. We were all at a wedding in New Jersey, and I met them there. And then I was going through some rough stuff back at home, like 6 months after that. Came out here to visit some other friends from the same program, or from the same missions program. And I texted Benny and I was like, let's grab coffee. And I felt like the Lord was like, ask him, if he has a roommate, if he needs a roommate or he knows anyone looking for a roommate. And I was like, because I was like, I kind of went into it thinking like, oh, you know what, California's cool. I'm in Orange County.
Okay.
I live 5 minutes away, 2 minutes away from where him and I grabbed coffee, and he was like, actually, bro, like I do, and I do. I don't know for a roommate, but I do have a room for you because I'm moving out. Because he was proposing soon at that point, so he was getting married in like a year, but he was moving out in like a new place. He's like, dude, when are you looking to move out here? And I was like, 3 months. He's like, that's when I'm looking to move out too. So just moving to my spot. So it just worked. Okay. And then him and I just kind of hit it off. Just from the wedding, and then super close with them just throughout living here. And they're my next door. Well, I moved in next door to them, but I was getting kicked out of my room because of like some like my old roommates were like COVID card and all this crap. Like, oh, we're scared of COVID. You need to move out. And I'm like, all right, yeah. And just to move in and all this other crap. I'm like, this is so whack. And then Benny was like, dude, my apartment complex, there's a unit open right a few houses down. Like, why don't you I'll look into it. And yeah, so it worked out perfectly, and God totally just set the whole thing up. Again, just an intervention.
Okay.
Where I'm like, well, real. This just like this just wouldn't have worked out and stuff. So yeah, so that's how I met them. Was Australia. It's a long story.
Okay, I got you. One of the last things that I want to talk about for today is if you like articulated an underlying purpose for your work or your life at this point, like what your individual life purpose is, either through photography or just through your own existence.
Yeah, I think my purpose through photography is, and all through life, is just to make other people happy, and I want my photo to and my interaction, everything that I do, I want it to point back to Jesus, and I think that's the thing, or the way that things are starting to go, with the feedback photo and stuff, but yeah, I just want everything that I do to be, I want people to feel that I have, looking at my work, and that you only get that joy from. And yeah, I want people to just experience joy and true freedom through looking at the things we create, just and being, whether it's even if it's not a photo or anything, if it's just me meeting somebody at a coffee shop or just surfing, whatever, like I want them to just them to feel different when they talk to me. You know, I want to be real with people. I want people to feel loved by me just having a conversation with them. Maybe, and I think that's it's a big thing for me. Is that's my purpose, and I like my goals in life. Like I want to have fun, you know.
Wait, you want to have what?
I want to have fun.
Okay.
I want to have fun, and I do have fun. I have a freaking blast. Like, you know, and I'm blessed to live where I live and be able to take pictures for a living and travel for a living and stuff. But like, fun, man, that's what it's about. You know, I just want to be happy. You know, life's too short to go through and be depressed and stuff. And I got a lot of goals and, you know, things I want to achieve. But overall, dude, like,
For the people who haven't talked to you since high school, what is one thing that you could tell them or that you would want to convey to them to sort of let them know how you've changed in any meaningful aspect? Like if there was one thing from high school that you regret or just like you know that you really overcame and someone from high school might perceive that you still like live that out.
really care what other people think. I still from time to time, but I'm learning to like kind of let go of that. My senior year, I was best, and I followed my dreams, and I'm living my dreams now. I was talking to last night. We full time on with one of my clients, and I was getting lunch with Benny last night or yesterday, and just that you know, I'm like, dude, this is crazy. I used to dream about these things happening right now, and I'm living my dreams, and it blows me away. Um, and I'm so glad that I decided to those dreams and to try my hardest to make those dreams come true. Everybody that knows me from high school knows that like I was gonna for and you know be that crazy nomadic kid that I always was, and just be that funny outgoing weeb that I am, you know. And I don't think there's really anything that changed a lot since high school, but I think my heart goes. I think my heart really hasn't changed. Like I've always loved people, and I've always about that. But I think for anybody that's really like struggling with, you know, whether they're in high school right now or if there's anybody that's like struggling, they want to do or anything after graduated, I would say that chasing their dreams is a good way to go. Whatever that dream may be, you can do a lot of stuff. If you just believe in yourself. What I really learned in this season is believe in yourself. You can make a lot of things happen.
Okay, Hunter, I had a absolute blast, and even though we had some audio issues up front, that was.
Yeah. It's not a podcast if you don't have any audio issues, right?
Dude, you're not wrong.
That's how it goes.
Okay. Do you have any plugs?
My Instagram is just Hunter Gawne. Yeah, you just spell my last name Gawne.
If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Peace.